I was just having this conversation with my mom, who was born in 1949, and we were talking about stupid stuff that we did when we were kids, when we were young. And that's always kind of a fun conversation. It's even more fun to learn about things that your parents did when they were kids. And it turns out, or she was talking about how in my lifetime, I was born in 1978. So up until the early 80s, mothers would put their babies outside to take naps. The belief being that fresh air was preferable and a good and healthy thing. So it's baby's nap time. Let's throw the baby in the stroller or the bassinet or whatever outside to get a little bit of fresh air. And this phenomenon also expanded too when you went to a restaurant, mothers would leave babies outside to take naps or just to be outside. So imagine, just imagine pulling something like that today. Holy cow. Can you imagine? If Child Protective Services didn't just come out of the woodwork, certainly a very helpful do-gooder person would probably sound the alarm on you and you would be let off in handcuffs and your child taken away or something like that. But it just got me thinking. It got me thinking in a span of a very short amount of time, the way that we've thought about and raised children has dramatically changed from leaving your baby outside while you go inside and have a bite to eat to helicopter and now bulldozer parents. And at the risk of being a little too hyperbolic, I've wondered where else in society this maps onto. And of course, spoiler alert, it's everywhere. So pretty amazing in the short or the span of a very, very short amount of time how we've gone from doing something which seems perfectly natural to the complete and total opposite. And certainly, I don't think that it's been a good thing moving from really high trust and very low concern for the safety of your child to absolute fear and anxiety riddled parents. Who is this really benefiting, if anybody at all? Certainly, what we've done to our kids is decided, or I guess inadvertently, moved to, less independent and less resilient kids. We moved from being free range children to range children, where there's very little unstructured anything that goes along. So we're certainly they're going to have a harder time developing more resilience and more independence. And when we don't give people the opportunity to go out and make mistakes and learn from failures and to skin their knees and to build autonomy, well, then they're not going to have those things. They're going to be less independent. They're going to be less resilient and they're going to be more dependent as opposed to autonomous and independent. And I think we're probably creating pretty anxious kids and pretty stressed out kids when I, as a parent, am behaving very anxiously and stressed out. It's going to bleed onto or affect my kids. So that's not a good thing. And what led us here is clearly a lack of communal trust. Clearly, if we still had high levels of trust, we would happily throw our kids outside for naps. But that's not the case anymore. So, social cohesion has weakened. There's not a lot of neighborhood trust. Certainly in some places, that's true and it's not. But just on the whole, things have shifted so much. And recognizing that fear and uncertainty are one of the main drivers behind today's parenting style is just gives us an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity to sort of recalibrate. Am I acting out of genuine concern and caution, or am I reacting to over exaggerated fear? I don't know. What can I do to really nurture resilience and independence in my kids, regardless of what anxieties I might be experiencing? So, again, wasn't long ago that we trusted humanity enough to leave babies outside unattended. And now all of a sudden we've got low trust and paranoia at an all-time high. So it's been half a century. Um, You leave your kids outside, a SWAT team's gonna happen or show up on the scene. There's gonna be some kind of a true crime podcast, which is recorded, or some kind of a Netflix limited series about what a piece of crap I am as a parent. So, you got to give us credit for dismantling a high trust society in such a short amount of time. So how did we do it? I guess that's what's really what I wanted to talk about today is how do we manage this in such a short amount of time? And I think when you think about it and you reflect on this, it happened a lot easier than I think that we think. We replaced neighborhoods with Facebook groups. We replaced trust with tracking apps and air tags, and we replaced community bonds and connection with cable news. So fear, anxiety, terror, surprise became our favorite pastimes, and we became suspicious as opposed to trusting. And now we're all trapped inside again, doing true crime and limited series about how awful everybody else is around us and how we can't trust anybody. So amazing. And it'll just be a pretty short amount of time till we are patrolled full time by bipedal drones, and probably just drones that are flying around and recording everything, all in the short period of time of about 50, 60 years. So, where else? Where else does this show up? Where else has it shown up then versus now? You ever ride in the back of a station wagon? Hmm? You ever been in a station wagon? Have you ever ridden in the back of a station wagon? Well, if you have, it's a cool experience because you're sort of driving in reverse because you get to look out the great big back window, but there's no seat belts back there. So you're just kind of bouncing around, flying around. And yeah, that's illegal today. It was probably illegal back then. And I don't really know. Different experience today. You ever drank water out of a hose before? Hmm, hmm, hmm. I don't think I ever drank out of a plastic water bottle until I was probably in my 30s, at least 20s. And now I'm remembering, I think Evian was the first one. Fancy French water made its way into our consciousness, and now we don't drink anything other than out of bottles of water. And that's, of course, filling our bodies with plastic, which is awesome. Nothing bad about that. Do you lock your doors? Do you lock your car doors? Do you lock your house doors? Certainly, everybody locks their doors now. We've got not only locking doors, but we've got car alarms, and we've got the club and all other manners of devices that we lock our cars and our bikes up and our scooters and this, that, and the other thing. What about sunscreen? Huh. Did you wear a lot of sunscreen when you were a kid? Or maybe you actually put cocoa oil on your body to cook yourself in the sun to a nice golden color. I don't know that I ever did that. And I remember zinc oxide. Do you remember zinc oxide, the neon colors that we put on our face? That was pretty cool. But obviously today, we're sort of coming full circle on this one because we realized that just putting petroleum-based products on our skin is not a good thing. Maybe we should be a little bit more thoughtful, kind of like the plastic bottles that we're ingesting. Yikes. Again, better, worse? I don't know. Did you wear a helmet when you were riding your bike when you were a kid? I know that I didn't. I'm trying to think back as to whether or not anybody was wearing helmets back then. If you did, you were probably labeled a dork, probably ridiculed horribly. And I was probably one of the people doing the ridiculing. So if I did that to you, my apologies. You probably have way less CTE than I have because no doubt I fell off that bike, saw stars when I hit my head, and it's maybe one of the another addition to the long list of why I'm neither a physician nor did I go to Harvard. But what about food? What about food? How has that changed over the last 50 years? Hmm. Well, I remember eating peanut butter sandwiches on just good old fashioned Wonder Bread and good old fashioned Jif or Skippy. Now those things are now I don't think that those things exist anymore. Is Wonder Bread a thing anymore? Now it's gluten-free something or other, which is great. I'm not saying that eating refined, bleached white bread was good. I'm just saying that it's changed a lot. The bread was bread, and peanut butter wasn't the most lethal thing on the face of the earth. Huh. What about hand sanitizer? What about that? I don't recall it really washing my hands when I was a kid, but if I did, it was with a bar of soap. And certainly nobody needed, or rather, at every entrance to every building and everywhere in America was there a hand sanitizer dispenser everywhere where I could just nuke whatever was in existence on my hands, good and bad. I'm sure there's lots of stuff on my hands that I don't want, but I'm also sure that, as I'm pretty sure, there's a lot of important things going on my skin as well, and I shouldn't just carpet bomb the F out of it. I don't know. I don't know. And then the whole GPS thing. Do I really need to know exactly where my kids are at every moment of every day? The thought of not knowing that does give me a little bit of pause and anxiety, but then I can think it all the way through and realize that everything's probably okay. But how did you learn that it was time to come home when you were a kid? Streetlights turn on, maybe that was the indication. Maybe your mom was like my mom, where she had the ability to insert like her pinkies into her mouth somehow and then create the loudest noise that anybody had ever heard. Are people able to whistle like that anymore? Has that been lost? Maybe I could add that here. Let's talk about play dates. Let's talk about play dates. Oh my gosh. The engineering of childhood fun is out of control. Let's go play outside. Go do stuff outside, for God's sakes. Nope. Organized play dates. Organized team sports. Organized. When has over-engineering ever been a bad thing? Oh, wait, over-engineering is always a bad thing. What happened to serendipity? What happened to just letting things happen magically and whimsically? No, we're not doing that. This is how it's going to be. We're going to be organized, structured, scheduled. Not good. And of course, participation trophies. I did a deep dive on this the first time that my child was offered a participation trophy. It was not accepted. I'm sure that he probably would have wanted it because he's a kid and kids like trophies and they are not wise enough or equipped to suss out the dangers of participation trophies. And that's where parents come in. That's the job of parents to say no. Rewarding everyone is going to create some negative second order effects. There's going to be some bad things that come along with just giving everybody a trophy just for showing up. Yeah. Can we all agree on that? Wait, I don't think we can because people are still doing it. My goodness. Anyway, trigger warnings. Trigger warnings and safe spaces. Ugh. Ugh. Trigger warnings. Tell you what a trigger warning was. Well, there's a million. Life itself was essentially the trigger warning. There were no safe spaces. You just encountered other human beings throughout the course of your life and you dealt with it. Anyway, let's move on from that. Let's move on from that. It's okay to be offended. It's okay to get your feathers ruffled. We don't need terms for all of this. Just figure it out. Smartphones. Smartphones. Yeah. What did we ever do with boredom? What did we ever do with pondering things? What did we ever do? Self-reflection, just the ability to sit down and kind of stare off into nowhere and to be a little bit bored and to somehow entertain ourselves without directly and immediately staring at a screen with my mouth sort of partially open, collecting flies. Well, we'll see what happens with this one. We'll see what happens with this one and all of technology. We should just put technology here because it's certainly bringing a lot of people out of poverty all over the world, while at the same time putting most of us back into poverty when it comes to being able to function as an autonomous and independent human being without needing to be jacked into the matrix 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hmm. Poverty of attention, poverty of ability to self-soothe, poverty and my ability to entertain myself, to sit quietly in a room by myself. We've always sucked at that. But now cell phones, or rather smartphones, really robbing us of our ability to handle not having outside stimulus in the form of a screen. Hmm. Oh, the good old days, the good old days. Well, we've come a long way. Or we've just been running away from the way that things were. What's the solution to any of this? Are there solutions to any of it? Well, I think that if we could go back to a high trust environment, that many of these things would sort of balance themselves out. We'd revert back to nature would heal, like during COVID, how the dolphins returned to Venice, if that really happened or not. Nature is healing. Well, our bodies have the ability to heal. Our intellects probably have the ability to heal, and certainly our societies also have the ability to heal. But there's also required inputs. There are required inputs from each of us individually, and individually inputting things and making commitments to certain things will bring us back. But in order to have a high trust society, we have to have our table stakes in order. And I've talked exhaustively about this. We have laws in the books. These laws must be enforced. We must have safe streets. We must have safe, clean parks and neighborhoods. We must have clean water. We must have little to no crime. So, how do we do those things? Well, it existed once in the world, and it existed once in our communities. It existed once in our cities. And we can just go back to how it is that we were functioning back then. And we realized that, well, we don't need to do anything new. We just need to keep doing the things that allowed us to have a high trust society in the first place, which again, to enforce our laws, to focus on things that are most important, taking care of children, caring for our elderly, keeping our streets clean, keeping our water clean, making sure that we have access to good and safe schools, all of these things. You know, the values that got us here. And that's a term that we've certainly been kicking the crap out of for some time, and I'm guilty of that. I've been thinking and talking about values for probably the better part of 10 years. But values are the filter through which we take in and process information, and it's how we make decisions about things. So if our priorities are high trust societies, safe streets, clean water, good schools, again, safe neighborhoods, those are our table stakes, then our values are I'm going to operate based on those things. My values are reciprocity, that I'm going to do my part to keep the neighborhoods clean, to keep the streets clean, and that I'm going to ask my neighbor to do that as well. And if we all did that, well, we'd probably be in a pretty good spot. One of my values is justice. Well, that is a function of holding people accountable. And if somebody breaks the law, that law is enforced, there's a punishment, whatever that might be. But we've already agreed on these things. We've already agreed on many of these things. And I think part of the conflict or challenge that we're experiencing is that now there are some questions about these things. And it's really positive and constructive to be revisiting these things because times change, our preferences change. But I'm making the argument that we've gone too far in the opposite direction. I'm making the argument that there are certainly a lot of things that were happening when I was 5 years old, so roughly speaking, 41 years ago, that are superior to the way that things are going today. And I'm certainly not going to stand here and say that everything was better because not at all. But these things demand that we interrogate reality. They demand that we say, okay, let's take stock and assess where are we today, the ground that we've traveled, the progress that we've made, the changes that we've enacted, are they serving us? The whole idea and the whole value of conservatism is that you recognize the good things and you hold on to them. The value of progressivism is that you innovate, you optimize, you recognize when things are not good or when things could be improved, and then you work to do that. And this is why both things must exist. This is why we have more conservative people and we have more progressive people, and we must be able to come together with that spirit of reciprocity and the spirit of genuine care and love for one another so that we can get to a place where we have high trust. We can get to the place where we can be comfortable letting our kids walk to school and play outside and drink the water and do all these things. Because that's what I want. I'm sure that's what you want. The main thing in all of this is understanding what the main thing is and then keeping the main thing, and not getting too distracted by what could be and not getting too locked into what was. Let's approach things with wisdom. Move forward as virtuous people, being strong enough to do anything, but choosing a moral, just, and kind path. What I'm talking about is doing your part by doing your best.